Nora Quinn's knuckles hovered an inch from the polished mahogany door when she heard the shutter click behind her. Paparazzi, 3 of them, lenses already trained. The brass numbers read 47B, not 47A, and she'd just knocked on the wrong townhouse 30 seconds before Manhattan's biggest charity auction. The door swung open to reveal a man in a half-buttoned tuxedo shirt, dark hair disheveled, gray eyes widening, not in confusion, but in something sharper. Calculation. He grabbed her wrist gently but firmly and pulled her inside. "Thank God you're here," he said, loud enough for the cameras. "I was starting to think you'd stood me up." The foyer smelled like expensive leather and rain-soaked pavement tracked in from outside. Crystal sconces threw amber light across minimalist furniture. A single painting, something abstract and aggressive, dominated one wall. Nora's vintage Leica hung around her neck, her go-to talisman since her grandmother passed, its worn leather strap soft against her collarbone. She'd been hired to shoot candids at the Brightwell Foundation gala next door, not to stand in some stranger's entryway while he buttoned his collar with surgeon precision. Through the tall windows, she could see the photographers repositioning, zooming in. "I'm the photographer for the auction," Nora said, keeping her voice low. "I knocked on the wrong door." The man's jaw tightened. He glanced at the window, then back at her. "Cassian Vale. And those vultures have been camped outside for 2 hours because my ex-wife's publicist leaked a story about me skipping family court." He straightened his cufflinks, platinum engraved with what looked like longitude and latitude coordinates. "I need to walk into that gala tonight looking stable, committed, and thoroughly unavailable for scandal." Nora should have apologized and left through the back. She should have texted her editor, Mira, and arrived at 47A 5 minutes late with a story about GPS failure. Instead, she watched Cassian pace 3 steps to the window and freeze. One of the photographers was filming now, not shooting stills. Live feed. Instagram or worse. "If I walk out alone," Cassian said, "the narrative writes itself. Reclusive CEO ditches charity event. Probably guilty of whatever they're already inventing." He turned to her. "But if I walk out with you, looking like we planned this, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "That's insane," Nora interrupted. "It's practical." His voice carried no charm, only transaction. "You walk in with me, stay visible for 20 minutes, then disappear into your job. I'll triple your appearance fee. Cash, no contract. Nobody needs to know it was staged." Nora's fingers found the Leica's worn lens cap in her jacket pocket, the one engraved with her grandmother's initials, EQ. Her grandmother had photographed truth for 40 years, war zones, protests, moments that mattered. She would have laughed at this. Or maybe she would have understood that sometimes you adapt to survive. "If I do this," Nora said carefully, "we need rules." They stood in his living room now, the gala starting in 12 minutes. Cassian poured 2 glasses of water, still, not sparkling, and handed her one. Professional. Distant. "Rules," he repeated. "Fine. 1. Physical contact stays minimal and consensual. A hand on the small of your back maybe, or standing close enough to look comfortable. Nothing beyond that. 2, Nora added, if either of us feels unsafe or uncomfortable, we have a word to exit, something that won't sound obvious. Aperture, Cassian suggested, nodding at her camera. Aperture works. Nora took a sip of water. 3. This ends the moment I hand you off to someone you actually know. I'm there to work, not to perform all night. Agreed. Cassian set his glass down. 4. If anyone asks how we met, we say mutual friends introduced us 2 months ago. Vague, boring, plausible. And if they ask for details, we redirect. I'm good at that. He checked his watch. Swiss, minimal, expensive. We have documented whereabouts for tonight. I RSVP'd weeks ago you're contracted by the Foundation. If questioned later, our presence is corroborated by legitimate circumstances. Nora felt her chest tighten. This wasn't lying. It was narrative curation. She adjusted her camera strap. Let's get this over with. The gala's entrance hall glittered with too many chandeliers and not enough honest lighting. Cassian's hand rested briefly on her lower back as they stepped inside, exactly as promised, present but not possessive. The photographers outside had gotten their shots. Cassian Vale, composed and coupled, arriving on time. Story killed before it started. Inside, a woman in emerald silk intercepted them immediately. "Cassian, I didn't know you were seeing anyone." Her eyes assessed Nora with the subtlety of an audit. "Vivian," Cassian said smoothly. "This is Nora Quinn. Nora, Vivian Hart runs the Foundation's corporate partnerships." Nora extended her hand. "Pleasure. I'm actually here working, shooting candidates for your social media team." Vivian's smile sharpened. "A photographer. How refreshingly normal." She turned to Cassian. "Your ex-wife's people are saying you've been unreachable about summer custody arrangements." Nora felt Cassian's posture shift. Not much, just his shoulders squaring half an inch. Before he could respond, she laughed lightly. "Unreachable? The man answers emails at midnight. I've watched him negotiate a donor call while fixing his espresso machine." She met Vivian's gaze. "Maybe unreachable just means he stopped answering people who don't respect boundaries." Vivian blinked. Cassian's hand twitched near his cufflinks, those engraved coordinates catching lobby light. "Well," Vivian said, recovering, "enjoy the evening." She vanished into the crowd. Cassian exhaled slowly. That was either brilliant or reckless. "Both," Nora said. "You're welcome. Enjoying the tension?" Tap subscribe. The turn hits next. The main ballroom held 300 guests and a string quartet playing something safe and forgettable. Nora kept her camera raised, shooting establishing shots of the crowd, the floral arrangements, hydrangeas and white roses, predictable, and the silent auction tables. Cassian stayed within 15 feet, close enough to maintain the illusion but far enough to let her work. A man approached him, 60s, expensive suit that didn't quite fit. "Vale, good to see you out. Board's been wondering if you're planning to step back from the Hudson Quarter project." "Marcus," Cassian's voice cooled. "I'm not stepping back from anything." Marcus glanced at Nora, then back to Cassian. "Your personal situation has some investors nervous. Stability matters in real estate." Nora lowered her camera. She'd photographed enough corporate events to recognize a veiled threat. "Mr. Vale's personal situation includes showing up for commitments he made months ago," she said, keeping her tone neutral but firm. "Which is more than I can say for the 3 board members who canceled on tonight's gala last week." Marcus's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe respect. "You've done your homework." "I read the Foundation's donor bulletin," Nora replied. It wasn't a lie. She'd skimmed it in the Uber over. "Cassian's been a platinum sponsor for 5 years. Seems pretty stable to me." Marcus nodded slowly and walked away. Cassian turned to Nora, and for the first time tonight, something unguarded crossed his face. Not quite gratitude, but close. His hand moved toward his cufflinks again, then stopped. He touched the edge of her camera instead, a single knuckle brushing the worn leather strap. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked quietly. "My grandmother," Nora said. "She taught me that the truth doesn't need to be loud to land." An hour into the gala, Nora captured a shot she actually liked. A young girl in a wheelchair laughing with an older volunteer, the chandelier bouquet soft behind them. Real. Human. She checked the image on her camera's screen and noticed Cassian reflected in a mirror across the room, speaking with a woman Nora didn't recognize. The woman handed him something, a folded piece of paper. Small. Urgent. Nora zoomed in instinctively, habit overriding caution. Through the lens, she saw Cassian's expression shift from polite to tense in under a second. He glanced around the room, found Nora, and his eyes held a warning she couldn't decode. The woman left. Cassian pocketed the paper and made his way through the crowd toward Nora. When he reached her, he leaned in slightly, voice low enough that only she could hear. "We might have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that means our arrangement just became more complicated than 20 minutes of visibility." He paused. That was my ex-wife's sister. She said someone's been asking questions about tonight, about you. Nora's grip tightened on her camera. Questions like what? Like who you are, how long we've been together, and whether the timing is convenient. Cassian's jaw clenched. Someone's already trying to discredit this before we've even left the building. They left the gala at 9:47 p.m. through the kitchen exit, Cassian nodding to a security guard who pretended not to see them. The townhouse was darker now, colder. Nora's adrenaline had worn thin. Cassian poured bourbon, actually poured it, not water this time, and sat on the edge of his minimalist sofa without asking if she wanted any. Her name is Margot, he said finally. My ex-wife. We were married 9 years. We have a daughter, Iris. She's 6. He stared at the bourbon. Margot's with someone new. A producer, decent guy from what I've seen. But the custody arrangement says I get Iris 3 nights a week, and I haven't missed a single pickup or drop-off in 8 months, documented through our family court agreement. Nora sat in the chair across from him, camera still around her neck. 6 weeks ago, Margot's lawyer filed a motion claiming I'm negligent and emotionally unavailable. It's false. It's retaliation because I wouldn't fund her new partner's production company. Cassian opened a drawer in the side table and pulled out a folder. Plain manila, institutional. Inside are call logs, text threads, time-stamped photos of Iris and me at the park, at her school, our dinner dates, everything. But my lawyer says unless I can prove someone's actively spreading false narrative about tonight, the court won't care. He handed Nora the folder. Inside was documentation, screenshots of text messages to his daughter's school confirming his presence at pickup, a screenshot of a parking garage keycard log dated 3 weeks prior, showing entry and exit times matching her preschool's hours, a bank transfer memo showing tuition payment, and underneath it all, a handwritten note in a child's careful letters. Daddy, you are the best. Love, Iris. Dated last Tuesday. Nora's breath caught. They're trying to erase you. They're trying to make me look like I staged tonight to improve my image before the hearing, Cassian said quietly. If the story breaks that I orchestrated an elaborate fake date just to look stable in court, Margot's team uses it as evidence I'm manipulating narrative instead of being present. Nora's fingers found the Leica's worn strap again. Her grandmother's initials. EQ, evidence. Questions. Why are you telling me this? Cassian met her eyes. Because that woman who handed me the note. She works for Margot's legal team. She was confirming that someone has already started asking the foundation about you, who you are, whether we've really been together, whether this was calculated. He leaned forward. If this blows up publicly, it destroys my custody case. And it could hurt you too if you're attached to it. Nora stood and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still reflected the city's glow. She could feel Cassian watching her. My grandmother died 3 years ago, Nora said. She was a war photographer, spent 40 years documenting impossible situations, not to expose the worst in people, but to prove that good things were possible too, even in rubble. She touched the Leica. When I was 12, she showed me how to load film, how to read light, how to frame truth so people would actually see it instead of look past it. She turned to face him, and then she got sick and I was taking pictures of her hospital bed instead of shooting wars, and she said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Truth doesn't need drama to matter. The smallest honest moment, properly witnessed, changes everything." Cassian waited. "I'm not going to lie for you," Nora said. "I'm not going to disappear or let someone erase what happened tonight. But I'm also not going to hand you over to people who think narrative is the same as reality." She paused. "If you're telling me the truth about Iris, about the documentation, then we protect it. Properly. Witnesses, timestamps, the actual record." Cassian's expression shifted. Something like relief, but also fear. "That's more complicated than you think." "Then explain it to me." Nora sat back down. "Tell me what you're actually afraid of." He pulled out his phone and scrolled to an email thread. "This arrived 4 days ago. Someone using an anonymous account sent Margot's lawyer a message claiming that I've hired crisis management to stage a relationship before the custody hearing. They included a breakdown of my schedule, the gala date, and a photo of you and me from tonight, already circulating in a private PR group tagged Suspected Paid Appearance. Nora leaned in and read. The timestamp was real. The details were clinical, almost authoritative. Whoever sent it had done their homework. Who would do that? She asked. I have 3 guesses, Cassian said quietly, and all of them end with someone benefiting from me losing custody. Nora's phone buzzed at 11:33 p.m. A text from Mira, her editor at the foundation. Got a weird call from someone claiming you're being paid by Cassian Vale to pose as his girlfriend. Obviously, I told them that was insane, but heads up. Stories already circulating in media groups. You good? Nora showed the message to Cassian. His jaw tightened. It's accelerating, he said. Once it hits social media, the court will see it as evidence I'm manipulating perception. And the foundation might drop your contract if they think you violated professional boundaries. Nora's career was built on being the invisible observer, the one behind the lens who documented without bias. If her objectivity got compromised, the work evaporated. She opened her phone and pulled up the photo she'd taken tonight, the one of Cassian reflected in the mirror, his expression shifting when he saw the folded note. The metadata showed the timestamp, 8:47 p.m., location data intact. The image was unedited, pure documentation of a moment he'd never intended to reveal. I have leverage, Nora said carefully. A photograph of you receiving that note, time-stamped, geotagged. It proves someone was communicating with you about a strategy tonight. If we pair that with the legal documentation you already have, the custody agreement, the pickup logs, the bank transfers, Iris's note, it creates a timeline that contradicts the anonymous email. It also proves you were photographing me without my knowledge, Cassian pointed out. I was doing my job. I photograph everything at these events. Nora leaned back. But here's the thing. If we release that photo and your documentation together, with your lawyer framing it as corroborated evidence of timeline integrity, it becomes a counter-narrative. You're not staging anything. You're proving that someone else is. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. You'd do that? I'd do it if you tell me right now that everything you've shown me is true. No edit, no hesitation. He met her eyes. It's true. Curious how this unravels. Hit subscribe to follow the fallout. By Tuesday morning, the story had fractured into a dozen variations across social media. Entertainment journalists were running headlines. CEO's convenient date at charity gala, calculated move. And romance or PR stunt. Inside Cassian Vale's staged appearance. The foundation's director called Nora at 6:15 a.m., voice careful but cold. I've been getting calls, she said, about your professional boundaries. I need to know if there's any truth to the rumor that Mr. Vale compensated you to appear as his date. No, Nora said. He didn't. The appearance was genuinely accidental. I knocked on the wrong door. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you the decision to walk into that gala together wasn't strategic. It was. That's what he needed. Silence on the line. The difference, Nora continued, is that the strategy wasn't fake. He's genuinely navigating a custody dispute where someone has been spreading false information about him. That's documented. That's verifiable. I can't employ a photographer who's entangled in legal proceedings, the director said quietly. I'm sorry, but you need to hand off your files and step back from any further foundation events. We'll honor your contract for this week. But after that, the call ended. Nora sat in her apartment, a studio in Astoria with exposed brick and north-facing light, and felt something pivot inside her. Her camera hung on the wall. Her portfolio, built across 5 years of meticulous documentation, had just become the evidence against her credibility. By Tuesday afternoon, Cassian's lawyer had received a motion from Margot's team requesting an emergency custody review. The court date was scheduled for Friday. The filing included screenshots of social media posts mentioning Nora, the anonymous email, and a statement from Margot claiming that Mr. Vale's pattern of coordinating media appearances demonstrates continued disregard for our daughter's privacy and well-being. Cassian's lawyer sent an email to his personal account at 3:47 p.m. Cassian, we need to discuss your response strategy. The opposing counsel is framing tonight's gala appearance as part of a larger pattern of manipulation. We need something substantial to counter this. Not just documentation, but a clear alibi that proves Mr. Vale was focused on legitimate business, not image crafting. What do we have? That evening, Nora sat alone in Cassian's townhouse. He'd given her a key, a gesture neither of them had discussed. She pulled up the photo of him in the mirror. The timestamp, the evidence, the truth that nobody was listening to. How do I prove that being honest looks like this? She whispered to the empty room. How do I show that a real moment doesn't need a script? Wednesday morning, Cassian's lawyer made a strategic move. Instead of trying to discredit the anonymous email, he released a comprehensive timeline document filed directly with the court. It included Cassian's phone keycard log showing his presence at his office building from 2 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Monday, confirmed by building security's digital attendance system, parking garage footage, timestamp, automatic, third-party maintained, receipt from the building's ground floor cafe, timestamped 4:15 p.m., showing he'd purchased dinner for his legal team during a strategy meeting. The invoice was itemized and dated. Then the gala timeline, Foundation's event check-in log showing his arrival at 7:02 p.m., photographed by the official Foundation photographer, whose EXIF data and camera metadata proved legitimacy. The Foundation's official photographer, a third-party contractor with no connection to Cassian, provided a sworn statement confirming that Cassian arrived at 7:02 p.m. with an unscheduled companion. The photographer's notes mentioned, male guest arrived with female guest. Both appeared to be meeting staff coordinator at entrance. No prior coordination noted. The Foundation's event coordinator corroborated that Cassian had RSVP'd for one ticket weeks prior, but had requested to bring a +1 at 7 p.m. sharp, citing last-minute schedule alignment. The valet attendant provided a separate statement confirming Cassian's vehicle arrival time matched the security log. Cassian's lawyer included a brief from the legal compliance department at his investment firm, dated and signed. Mr. Cassian Vale was present at scheduled board-level strategy meeting Monday, 6:30 p.m., with documented attendance and participation in substantive business proceedings. This meeting was scheduled weeks in advance and was necessary for the Hudson Quarter commercial approval process currently under federal review. The letter included specific agenda items, timestamps for each discussion point, and a note that Mr. Vale's attendance was essential and cannot be characterized as discretionary. Most critically, the lawyer included a statement from the school that the gala appearance had no bearing on Iris's schedule. Her pickup on Monday occurred at 5:45 p.m., handled by Cassian's assistant, documented and pre-approved under the custody arrangement. The school confirmed that Cassian maintains a 94% direct pickup rate, and that Iris shows no signs of confusion or instability regarding his presence in her life. The documentation was thorough, verifiable, and radically boring, the very opposite of manipulation. It was the paper trail of a man being exactly where he said he was, doing exactly what he claimed to do. But it still needed one more piece: Nora's photograph. She met with Cassian's lawyer on Thursday morning in a glass-walled office in Midtown. Margaret Chen, 62, methodical and unbothered by celebrity or scandal. "This photograph," Margaret said, holding the image of Cassian in the mirror, "proves he received the note, but it also proves you were working at the event, doing your professional job. The XEF data is clean, no editing, pure documentation, and the timestamp contradicts the anonymous email's timeline." She pulled out her laptop. "I'm filing this as supplementary evidence tomorrow, labeled as independently captured documentation of event timeline integrity. You're not a witness, you're a documented professional presence at the location. The photograph is your work product. That distinction matters legally." "What about my reputation?" Nora asked. "Depends on what you want it to be," Margaret said. "You can disappear, or you can stand by the documentation. Your choice." Friday morning, The courthouse in downtown Manhattan held 40 journalists and 3 competing networks with satellite trucks parked outside. Cassian and Nora arrived separately, her insistence his compliance. She positioned herself in the gallery, camera in hand, back in her role as neutral observer. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Margot's lawyer presented the anonymous email, the social media narratives, and a statement claiming Cassian's Monday night appearance at the gala demonstrated a pattern of prioritizing public image over private responsibility. Cassian's lawyer dismantled it methodically. The keycard log, the business meeting documentation, the school's confirmation of his parenting consistency, the foundation's official photographer's corroboration, and finally, Nora's photograph, presented not as personal evidence, but as independent documentation of timeline integrity. The image showed a businessman receiving information at a professional event, nothing more. The moment captured, the timestamp verified, the context confirmed. Margaret presented the school's statement. Mr. Vale has maintained consistent presence in Iris's life. His Monday evening business obligation and subsequent evening attendance at a professional charity event do not impact his custody responsibilities, which he fulfills with documented regularity. The judge reviewed the materials silently for 3 minutes. Then she spoke. The evidence presented demonstrates that Mr. Vale was engaged in legitimate business and community obligation, with no impact on his custodial responsibilities. The anonymous communication referenced in the opposing motion lacks verifiable source or substantive basis. This court finds no evidence of manipulation or negligence. She paused, looking directly at Margot's lawyer. However, I do find evidence of coordinated harm toward Mr. Vale's professional standing through unverified claims. I'm ordering that the source of the anonymous email be investigated by the court's compliance officer. If the origin can be traced to any party with legal representation in this case, sanctions will follow. The room stilled. Margot's lawyer's face went pale. Custody arrangement stands as established, the judge concluded. Mr. Vale maintains his regular schedule. And for the record, she looked up over her glasses. Proving you're being honest shouldn't require this much documentation, but thank you for showing up with your receipts. Outside the courthouse, journalists swarmed. Cassian's lawyer issued a brief statement. Mr. Vale is grateful the court recognized the integrity of his parenting commitment. We look forward to continuing focus on his daughter's well-being. Then she turned to Nora, who stood slightly apart, camera ready. You're the photographer, a journalist called out. Did you stage this? Nora lowered her camera. No. I knocked on the wrong door. That's not staging, that's accident. But the documentation that came after? That's real. That's what's always real if you're willing to look at it. Cassian turned toward her, and in the afternoon light his hand moved unconsciously to his cufflinks, those coordinates that meant something only he understood. A location marker, a point on the map where something changed. Behind Nora's neck the Leica hung with its worn leather strap, EQ's initials catching the sun. 6 weeks later, Nora received an envelope at her apartment. No return address, just her name in handwriting that was careful and deliberate. Inside was a single photograph, not her own work, but a professional headshot. Iris, age 6, holding a photograph of a sailboat. The inscription read, "For you, because you documented our truth. From Iris and Dad." Below it, a handwritten note from Cassian. The custody hearing was the beginning, not the end. Margot's lawyer traced the anonymous email back to her new partner's assistant. He wanted to prove I was manipulative to justify why his production company deal fell through. He's facing charges for filing a false legal document. The irony is that he almost succeeded by forcing me to prove something I should never have had to prove in the first place. But you showed up anyway. Not for me. For the truth. For what matters. Iris asked me yesterday why I kept saying aperture under my breath. I told her it was a safety word, a way to know when to stop pretending and start being honest. She said, like a camera. And I realized she was right. Sometimes the best way to see clearly is to capture exactly what's in front of you. No edit, no filter. I'm attaching a donation receipt to the Brightwell Foundation in your name for $25K, funding their education program for underserved photographers. It's not an apology. It's not even gratitude. It's just honoring the person who walked into this story by accident and chose to stay for the truth. Iris and I would like to have coffee with you. No pretense, no documentation needed. Just three people who learned that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is show up as you actually are. Cassian. The photograph showed Iris with her serious, focused expression, holding an image of open water and impossible distance. Behind the photograph, the Leica was barely visible, a shadow on the sailboat. Nora read the note twice, her fingers tracing the places where ink had hesitated. She thought about her grandmother, about what it meant to document something so thoroughly that you stopped being a stranger to it. You stopped being separate from the story. 3 weeks later, Nora sat at a corner table in a small cafe in Astoria, sunlight slanting through exposed brick. Cassian and Iris arrived exactly on time. Not early, not late. Iris carried a drawing pad and wanted to know how to frame a photograph so people would actually look at it instead of look past it. Nora showed her. They didn't talk about the hearing or the lawyers or the anonymous email. They talked about light and composition and the way a story changes depending on where you stand when you're witnessing it. Iris drew 3 people sitting at a table, all of them holding cameras. When she was done, she handed the drawing to Nora. "This is for your proof collection," Iris said seriously. "This is the proof that you were right." Cassian's hand moved to his cufflinks, that familiar gesture. But this time he let it rest, watching his daughter and this woman who had walked through his wrong door and chosen to stand by the truth. On the napkin beside the drawing, Iris had written in careful letters: boundaries, safe space, love. Dignity isn't something you earn, it's something you protect in yourself and others. When faced with the choice between comfort and truth, choose the documentation, choose the witness, choose the people brave enough to stand in the frame and say, "This happened. I saw it. It matters." What would you have done? Subscribe and tell us in the comments. When has proof changed everything for you?